Concussions, are these just these minor little injuries that we were taught growing up playing sports? Oh, it happens. You'll be okay a few days later. Or are they actually more serious? Well, we'll get into the research a little bit here, but we're going to start off first with looking at a couple of pro athletes. So the very first one is Ronda Rousey. So if you are a fan of UFC, she was one of the most important UFC fighters in history, period, especially from the early 2010, to about 2015. And then she faded. But why did she fade? Well, she actually walked into the UFC with a long history of concussions. And then what happened? She was unstoppable. No one could touch her. Then she lost to Holly Holm in her title fight, right? Where she had kept defending it, defending it, defending it. After that fight, if you saw her, if you watched her, she never ever looked the same because concussions impact your processing speed, your peripheral awareness, right? Your reaction time, all of that. But also, when you have multiple concussions, your brain becomes more inflamed. So it takes less things to tip you into a new concussion. And when you watched any subsequent fight after Holly Holm, it was very apparent she was very quick to get into that inflammatory concussive state, which wasn't good. So ultimately, this led to her retiring. But something we should note is she retired back in 2016, and yet it's 2024 where she finally said, hey, this is why I retired. So this is really a big issue because you shouldn't be this long afterwards that we're hearing that, but people are scared to say they're dealing with concussions. And unfortunately, this leaves a lot of athletes who are actively playing with concussions, which is not good because it does increase your risk of future concussions, but also if any other injury goes up when you have concussions. Next, we're going to look at a soccer player named Raphael Varene. So he plays for France, okay, the French national team, but he also plays for Manchester United. Now, Manchester United is one of the biggest soccer clubs in the entire world. Before he played for them, he played for Real Madrid, which once again is one of the absolute biggest teams in the entire world. And what he says is concussions have damaged his body. He played multiple games with concussions. He dealt with a lot of fatigue. It's kind of on autopilot. And then one of the things he talked about here is micro concussions is one of the specialists told him. We often refer to these as subconcussive blows. Now, subconcussive blows are, it's when you take a hit, for example, to the head, it's not enough to truly usually cause a concussion, but it causes a little bit of jarring. But when you get enough of those, it ultimately does create the same symptoms as a concussion. So what are those symptoms? Fatigue, brain fog, headaches, mood changes, sleep changes, and much more. So, okay, right, we know the symptoms. We know these two high-level people, one retired, the other one's still trying to play, but he's definitely struggling through it. Is okay, cool. Well, here's this. Okay, so they've looked at some different studies and they looked at a newer study that came out, but this came out September 2023 is when this one, and they were looking at some research. Hey, they found that people who had a concussion early in life were at risk for cognitive issues like dementia later in life, even if people believe they had recovered. So this is important. Um, One of the things to say is addressing risk with patients at a time that works best for that individual and advise them to follow proper recovery protocols can benefit healing, which we're going to cover more in a little bit of what proper protocols should be versus how they're typically treated. And last thing, so this is from Alzheimer's.org.uk. Evidence linking head injuries to the risk of dementia. So they're looking at a study in Denmark, increased risk of dementia for 10 years after head injury in people over the age of 50. Now, there's other research I could go that shows you in military populations, one concussion, even without loss of consciousness, it doubled their risk of dementia. So there's a lot of things that we can consider. But needless to say, concussions are not these minor little injuries that we once believed, and it can impact you for years to come and definitely can increase your risk for dementia. So what do you do? So if you're enjoying this, please give me a like, comment, share, and follow me. tag other people. That is the only way I keep creating these videos, because I do want more education get out there, but I also need to know that people are truly consuming this and it's really helping you. Now, let's get back to what we were talking about. Concussions. How do you even make sure your kid can play the game safe? Should you pull them out? Should you not? Well, the very first thing is it really comes down to you should get proper baseline screening. Proper baseline screening is not a computerized test. It's not. Let's just be honest. What should it be? If you want to do a computerized test as part of it, that is okay. But you should also have computerized eye movement and balance testing. That way you have truly objective data. We are at a point where you have objective data, right? We don't have to be like, oh, follow my finger. We don't have to do that anymore. Okay? If you're in a pinch, you can. But to have that as a baseline or a post, come on. We've got the objective tools that we need to do testing properly. Let's get it done. Okay. Next, if your kid suffers something that could be a concussion, remember those symptoms we talked about: fatigue, brain fog, headaches. And I don't care if he takes a hit to the head and there's only a headache for a day or two and some mood changes and dizziness. Guess what? They should still be evaluated, because symptom recovery doesn't necessarily equal true functional recovery, which we saw. Risk of dementia, even if people thought they'd recovered. It's because what happens with a concussion is your brain can become inflamed, and you can't measure that with most of the routine tests. So you have to understand what the research shows, and you have to have strategies to go after that. But also, let's look at what we can truly measure, right? Let's do that. So get preseason testing. If your kid possibly suffers a concussion, or else if they did, get that testing, and they only return to play when their testing actually looks good. It doesn't matter if they say, I feel okay, because let's face it, we were all kids once. I fudged plenty to play when my ankle was still never 100% because I wanted to play. I was competitive. But now guess what? I'm still dealing with chronic ankle issues down the road because I didn't take it seriously. And it's much better to deal with chronic ankle issues than brain issues, because one increases your risk for dementia and the other one doesn't. So let's get that done, right? There's a way to do it. Let's make sure it's safe for your kid to play. And if it's not quite ready, let's rehab their brain. Let's get it back on track, get it to a better spot so they can go and play with the highest likelihood of not only success in their sport, but also reduce their likelihood of future concussions, and so they can live to their full potential. If you're looking for something like this, go ahead, reach out. We'll put the information on how to do so. And until next time, this is Dr. Z. I'm known as the Brain Guy.